Hi everybody. So this is my first, hopefully of many, weekly YouTube shows. In this situation that we find ourselves in, where we are being confined to, our own homes, it restricting us on what we can do. Normally I would be out and about doing loads of interviews with people about new films that are being released. And that's kind of grinding to a halt because there's only so many films that are in production and that are at a stage where they can be released. So what I want to try and do with this every week is just try and talk about some really interesting things, not just me talking to you or at you about them, but involving people who are part of those productions to tell you a little bit more about them. We're going to talk about music as well. I'm hoping to have some musicians and stuff. I got Roisin Murphy booked to come on in a little while, Groove Armada as well. So I'm just kind of open door. Whoever wants to come on and have a chat is more than welcome. I'm also editing this show on my own, so I'm learning as I go along, so bear with me. Maybe you can comment on or give me some advice as well on Final Cut Pro and some tips and shortcuts and all that kind of thing, because it's been fun. It's been interesting trying to learn it, but I also am really enjoying learning new skills and using this thing. It's great. I love it. So I apologise if this show is a little bit rough around the edges, but it's coming from the heart and it's coming from a good place, so I hope you enjoy it. So for the first show, we've got a real kind of little mix of things. I've some stuff to do with the podcast as well. So we had Isobel Waller-Bridge on the podcast last week. Had an amazing response from that. So I've got a little clip from Isobel and I talking. We recorded it on Zoom so you can see us chatting as well. There's a great new film that was, I think it only managed to be in cinemas for maybe a week, if that. It's called Calm with Horses. It's the kind of full-length feature directorial debut from a director called Nick Rowland. And he has worked with Ben from Blanck Mass on the soundtrack. It's gorgeous. Film is absolutely beautiful. So we're going to have some of that as well. Riz Ahmed is going to be on the show, and also Tayarisha Poe, who is a first-time female director that I'm excited to talk about her debut film, Selah and the Spades. So all that to come. But first up, Isobel Waller-Bridge, who is the most awesome and lovely person to spend time with. Her energy is infectious. She's an extraordinary composer as well and has worked across some really great things. And I think her music, she doesn't have the recognition of what she can do with her music. Emma is the most recent film that she's worked on, the Autumn de Wilde film. She also worked with Chania Button on Vita and Virginia, which is a beautiful, beautiful score, amongst many other things, including, of course, Fleabag, which I had to ask her about.
Haven't seen her since. Except for...
Nice jumpsuit.
Thank you.
You look well. Where have you been?
Boots. It's lovely there this time of year.
I guess it was about 6 or 7 years ago that we took the play to Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And I mean, that literally, there were photos of us on the train and we were still trying to make it. And I was doing that, I'd sort of done this through-scored sort of sound design for it. But the photos of that are so, and we were all sharing a flat, everyone was sort of sleeping on the floor because there were like 6 of us. So, I mean, it was just, as Edinburgh is, it was like totally great and chaos.
Yeah.
And so we'd sort of done that, and then it was sort of went quite well at Edinburgh. we were like, oh right, this is amazing. It was so exciting that people were responding to it and relating to it, and we were just like, oh my goodness. And then I think 2 brothers approached my sister and said, do you want to make it into a TV show? But then I think there were like 3 years or something between the play and that. So there's a gap where she was writing it and then making it. And then because I knew the play, I guess, inside out. I mean, I could literally recite it but then so then actually coming to the TV thing, which was very similar to the play, actually, with just, you know, obvious differences. But it was so part of the fabric of me as well. And because obviously it's my sister and I know her like incredibly well, that writing the music for that was just, it was really, I don't know what the word is quite actually, but it's just, it felt,
was it easy?
Was yeah, I don't want to say easy because it wasn't it wasn't easy, but at all, because obviously, you know, you go things like, oh my god, well, how should it sound? And but we definitely knew, because the writing of the first series was so just, there wasn't really that much music in the play.
Yeah.
We had this like, we've got this like elevator like music at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's like pre-show. And then so Flea was saying, like Phoebe was saying, for the opening titles of series 1, because it's got this like sort of like it's like noise, sort of scrunk kind of noise at the beginning, and then we got the end credits, and that's basically, and the guitar music, that's it. But she'd said, what if we, she'd sort of given me, she'd made a facial expression of what she wanted it to sound like at the beginning, so which genuinely is like a lot of the way that we collaborate.
I just did that earlier, didn't I? With all that, what's that emotion?
Yeah, exactly. And actually, it's really useful, because then you get sort of like, you know, you can sort of try and interpret it and stuff. But and then, so I'd written bits of music, and she was like, "Well, what if we just layer them on top of each other?" And so we did that, and then it created this sort of chaos, but also harmony. But also, it's like only like 2.5 seconds.
Yeah.
So that's how we sort of created that. And then then there's only like bits of percussion throughout the sort of, because it's the way Gary edited it was so funny, and the rhythm of it, he's an absolute genius. And then so we just added bits of like triangle, like it wasn't even like we just sat in a room with like a kind of percussion trolley, just like ding ding ding, and everything. It was like basically for like Claire, her like stressed out sound is just like a triangle, like, and we just like had that. And then like Harry, the boyfriend, was just this, we had this like double bass kind of when he's cleaning the flat and stuff, so really simple stuff. And then with the end guitar music, it was like we knew that she shouldn't, we didn't want her to feel like apologetic or she's a real badass, and she, even though it's like she knew, you know, all the mistakes that she was making, but she just kept moving forwards. And there was, and obviously the sort of wit to her, and we were talking about what the sound of it should be, and I sent them this guitar track, and then Phoebe just sent me a video of Harry, the director, and Lydia, the producer, just like headbanging to it while like in the edit, and they were like, yay. It's like, okay. So there you go, the fabulous Isobel Waller-Bridge. And Emma actually is available for you guys to watch on Home, as is Vita and Virginia, which is another film that she worked on, so go and check them out. Next up, a film that's going to be available for streaming from the 27th of April, I think, and it's a directorial debut from a guy called Nick Rowland, who I wasn't really familiar with any of his work prior to this. He's done a few shorts and stuff, but man, this film is pretty powerful. It's extraordinary, not least for its kind of central performances from Cosmo Jarvis as the kind of lead guy, who kind of goes by the name of Arm. He's an ex-boxer who, and they live in a sort of West Coast small town of Ireland, and he gets involved with this kind of the kind of bad family of the town, the Devers, and we find out that he had a relationship, that he had a child with this character called Ursula, played by the absolutely brilliant Naim Algar. And it's just about how he tries to navigate finding his truth, really. And it's, you would think with the kind of subject matter of the film that it would be pretty brutal, and there are very brutal moments in it in terms of this world that he finds himself in. I think almost in the same way that Paddy Considine did Journeyman, and about it being, you know, it's a boxing film. It's not a boxing film at all. There's so much depth and beauty and heart to that film, and I think this is really, really similar.
I think aesthetically, Nick, I mean, it's so accomplished. He's done an amazing job. It looks beautiful. There's a great car chase in the film as well. And Barry Keoghan's in it. He plays the younger kind of family member of this kind of crime family that he thinks that they're kind of best friends, and that friendship is very kind of one-sided. Do check out the film. I think it's beautiful. It's really exciting as well in terms of where Nick's going to go with this. What's also really exciting about it is that the soundtrack's been done by Blanck Mass. And so I was lucky enough to have Nick and Ben together. Now they're on the podcast this week, soundtracking. So if you want to listen to them in depth, talking about the film and their process and how they worked across the film, along with a lot of the music, then you can listen to the podcast, which you can find on all your usual podcast providers. But in the meantime, here's just a kind of little excerpt with a couple of clips from the film. It's called Calm with Horses. And I had absolute pleasure sitting down and chatting with Nick and Ben about working together on it.
Look, let me take Jack tomorrow. I take him home there. Just him and me, no dimple, no Devers, no nonsense, right?
I don't know. I don't think you could cope. It's not that simple.
Well, let me show you. Jack loves it here, don't you? He still loves it here. Let me show you what I can take care of him. Trying, nurse. Won't be like last time.
What would you do?
I would find some sort of trouble to get into. Won't we, Jack?
That's what I'm afraid of. All right, fine. Would you just keep an eye on him, will you? And be patient.
Yeah, I will do.
You remind me of yourself sometimes, you know that? I miss you. You know all this stuff with the Devers, right? That's not you.
Hearing that a lot lately.
The short story had this, it's a very, objectively, it's quite bleak and brutal. Yet there was a real sensitivity and kind of expressionistic, kind of melancholic tone to the story, which you get through the prose, which obviously you can't. It's hard to. How do you convey that over an adaptation in a movie? And so a lot of it came down to the sound design and the music. You know, we took the decision to try and really limit the point of view very closely to Arm and to kind of be in his head as much as possible, you know, because he's a character that he's not very good at expressing himself, and he's often not saying much, so we would often use music and sound design to kind of articulate a kind of visceral sense of how he feels. And then in terms of working with Ben, I mean, I've always been such a huge fan of his, so I remember kind of several years ago when we were first playing around with bits of voiceover and bits of the script, and I would play Ben's music over it to try and find a tone to it and stuff. But I never really thought we'd actually get to work together. So it was a real thrill for me.
Oh, wow.
I guess that the key was, because the story, it's a balance of tones. There's the crime thriller genre stuff, but there's also a lot of emotion in the story as well. And trying to find a sound and a score that could accommodate both sides of the story and in a very sort of fluid way, and that's what Ben, I think, does so brilliantly.
What was actually kind of interesting was that Nick told me afterwards, you know, I sent through some original kind of sketches for like a couple of cuts from the movie, just in a kind of demo sense. And Nick told me that he didn't open up the files to listen to the music for like 3 days afterwards because he really wanted them to be good.
Wow, tense. That could have gone the other way. Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
And then he'd have to tell me, you know, thanks but no thanks kind of situation.
Oh, yeah.
Calm with Horses. Looks beautiful, doesn't it? So great. So that's Calm with Horses, Riz Ahmed. Thank you so much to everybody who got in touch about the podcast and how much you enjoyed the episode with Riz. He was a great guest. And, you know, it's this thing that we kind of find ourselves in, that we're in this situation where I want to keep doing what I'm doing. And so I'm trying to find ways and means of doing that. You know, I've got all my microphones and things close by and all my recording equipment, still getting to grips with how to do it properly. So, you know, the quality is not as, the sound quality, I should say, is not as good as I would like it to be, but, you know, we needs must. So we're more than grateful to have Riz on the podcast. So I've pulled out a little clip of him talking about this short film, which is called The Long Goodbye. And it's a kind of short, I guess, a long form music video to go with the album of the same name. And the album's brilliant. The short film is 12 minutes long. It is mind-blowing. It's so powerful. It really kind of like shook me to my core. So go and seek it out. It's 12 minutes long. I've got a little clip coming up of it just now that kind of sets up the whole, you know, kind of love and sort of honesty that goes in within the family environment in the household. But please do check out the film. It's called The Long Goodbye. It's up on YouTube. And also check out Riz's album.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Slow down. Just slow it right down. You're deliberately trying to scare me and intimidate me. I know what you're doing, but you're playing my game. Slow it down, break it down.
Okay, break it down.
Do it slowly.
Break 1, 2, 3.
Who wrote the hit song Blinded by the Light?
5.
That's big, that's really obvious.
Go on then, Bruce Springsteen.
Obviously. Alright, what's next?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Hello, Rizwan. You know, मैं TV देख रहा हूँ. Abu, this is you can watch television anytime. It's 24-hour news. Nothing changes. In the way, you're not transparent. Abu, you see the news all the time, man. Come to it.
What came first, though, the idea for the film or the album, or was it a coincidental kind of thought process and creative project, really?
Yeah, so the album The Long Goodbye had already been recorded, and I was kind of thinking about what I wanted to do visually in terms of videos and stuff, and I got put in touch with Anil. Actually, a few people have been saying that we should meet for a while, and we sat down and started chatting. I was telling him about the album. We were just talking about really what's on our minds right now and where we're both at in our work, and it seemed that we were both in a place where we just wanted to make quite honest work, quite personal work, not really make work to fit to anyone's brief. And I kind of said that to him as well. I said, look, I've got this album and I've kind of made it just because I've got stuff to really get off my chest. And in terms of making videos, if you connected with it, you can kind of do what you want. And luckily for me, he was very collaborative, and we just kind of met up and spoke a few times. And we just landed on this idea. To be honest, the idea for the short was a bit more kind of fantastical and indirect to begin with. And the more we spoke about it, the more we realized, actually, why are we kind of sugarcoating reality with anything that's kind of whimsical or any kind of conceit? Why don't we just kind of say very clearly, this is the thing that's on my mind, and just put it out there in the world? And I think because it was born out of a very collaborative process where we were talking a lot, I think we emboldened each other to maybe make something that we might not have otherwise.
Yeah. Riz Ahmed, what a star, man. He also revealed a really interesting fact about Star Wars, but if you want to find out more about that, you can head to the podcast and listen to the entire episode. So my final kind of film to talk about this week is Selah and the Spades, and it's the directorial debut. I had quite a lot of those this week from a brilliant young woman called Tayarisha Poe. And the really interesting thing about this is that prior to the film, which is going to be available on Amazon from today, actually, 17th of April. So it's going to be up from today for you guys to check out. I love this film. She describes it as Clueless meets The Godfather. And I really like that description. She's also got some really interesting reference points that you'll hear her talk about in a second. And again, I think what an accomplished piece of work for a first-time director. And it's so great to have a female director on to talk about stuff, because there's not that many around. Well, there's not enough of them around. So it's great to have Tayarisha on the show. Selah and the Spades is about this kind of girl in high school who kind of runs a bit of not a gang and not an organisation, but she's kind of one of these kind of girls who think she's in control of a situation, and it transpires that she's not actually. This is a really interesting story on how Tayarisha came to this, in that she had almost been kind of testing out this character for the last couple of years through a blog that she wrote, through Tumblr stuff, loads of really interesting bits and bobs, and using music quite a lot as well. And the score is brilliant in this as well. So it's called Selah and the Spades. She's Tayarisha Poe, and I really loved chatting to her.
And I read as well that you drew elements of inspiration from your own experience. Not kind of literally, but elements, but elements of it. But I guess that's a big part as well, is along the way knowing how much of yourself you want to put in there as well, and knowing what to hold back as well.
Yeah, I feel like it's it was useful for me to. It felt really good the moment when Selah stopped feeling like, oh yeah, this is just me in high school, but named Selah. And it was more like, oh, no. These are some bits of my high school experience. I went to a boarding school. These are some bits of my world. These are some bits of the people that I love, bits of the relationships that I've, fought within and loved and had all these crazy experiences, bits of all those things. But this person is her own person, and she has her own history that isn't my history, and she does things that shock me. So it's nice when I find that when I write with a focus for like the details of people and their worlds, then the characters tend to surprise me, and I like that when that happens as I'm writing.
When you were thinking about who you wanted to incorporate into, both in terms of score but existing music as well, and I was familiar with Aska's work previously with Crystal's films, with both Wolfpack and Skate Kitchen. I absolutely, I love Skate Kitchen.
Brilliant,
incredible film. But what was it about her work that you kind of you saw a connection there, and you thought she'd be right to work with on Selah?
Well, it was in part because of seeing Crystal's work. I know Crystal, we met during the Sundance Labs. And so it was in part just knowing of Aska's work through Crystal's work, and loving Crystal's work, and really just loving how when I listen to scores by Aska, I don't feel like anybody is pushing a score on me. Like, I don't feel like anybody's just like, oh, just put some score here because we can't figure out what else works. I feel like she's a composer who, I feel this way about, all of the people who were department heads or who worked on this film. Like, nobody ever pushed anything so that their department could shine, but it was always whatever is in service of the story. So I really enjoyed working with Aska, because a lot of our conversations and what we ended up doing, or what she ended up doing, was about like the musicality of everyday life. And so like the things within the film, or the sounds within the film, that she could take to make music from. So one of my favorites is the bit of score in the gym during that Spirit Squad. Selah's like directly addressing us. Aska used a lot of the sounds of like their sneakers on the ground, or like on the gym floor, like their skirts swishing, or like the exhalations that they have while they're dancing, and to make the score for that bit. And it was just like the most magical thing to hear. And it was the only score that could have gone with that sequence. But I didn't know that beforehand. Like, we only discovered that in post, really. Because we gave Aska like all the sound files for the films, and we're just like, do something cool, and she did over and over. She really did. Also, like, like just thinking about how to use like the influences on the film. Like Wes Anderson is a big influence for me, and like we talked a lot about the playfulness of what's the composer, Mark Mothersbaugh, I think is the composer who he often like the playfulness of that music. And then the great thing about Aska is she has a teenage daughter, so she's like extremely attuned to the world of like cool hip teenagers. So we talked about like trap Wes Anderson, like trap music meets Wes Anderson, and how to have that same playful feeling when you like you're seeing the Spades like dealing drugs and going to parties, and it has that like playful energy, but it's also like, I mean, it like feels current and feels like connected to the world of cool hip Black teenagers.
They make the new kids take our photos because they don't take us seriously. That's a mistake the whole world makes. They never take the girls seriously. So it's like this. When you're 17, and when you're a girl, you've got the whole world telling you what to do with your body. Your mom tells you, change your dress, it's too fast, too short, too shiny. And school tells you, cover your shoulders, cover your legs, because they can't tell boys to keep it in their pants. And boys, they're the worst. They tell you they'll only like you if you look impossible. So you've got all these people telling you how to wear your skin, making you feel like whatever you want is the wrong slutty thing. And then you've got Spirit Squad. You know who decides our uniforms?
We do.
You know who choreographs our routines?
We do.
We tell you how short our skirts will be, how high and tight our tucks will rain, how spread out we make our eagles. I mean, if you got a problem with it, well, honestly, that's your problem. Because we do it for ourselves, for our control over our bodies. Because when you're 17, you've got to grab onto that control wherever you can and hold tight for dear life. Because they always try and take it from you, don't they?
The way the blend works between everything is so great, you know, be that the natural sounds of the film, the score, but then also those tracks that you have decided to use. And is it Terence Nance? Oh my God, that track's amazing.
I love it so much.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Yeah, that
so good.
Terence I've known for a few years now, and he's one of our EPs on the film. But he's just been like a supporter of me and of my work since I graduated college. Like he's just a friend, a brother. But when I heard that song, I like started crying because I was just like, I don't know how you capture it. For me, it captures the uncertainty of emotionally engaging with another person, period. Like it just immediately captures all of the like the anxieties, the joy, the happiness, the like overwhelming experience of emotional connection with other human beings. And that's what the movie's about. So I like, it was a perfect song for that moment with Paloma and Selah and sharing the headphones, the Garden State moment of my movie. And then I felt like that was the only song that I listened to for that moment where I could understand why Selah has to like jerk off the headphones and just like shake it off. I could see that song unsettling her in the right ways.
Well, Terence sounds like one of these people. I've kind of gone down a bit of a rabbit hole of kind of Terence and his life, and he's kind of one of those people who can kind of do anything, you know. And it's kind of like,
do it well.
Yeah, he directs.
And do it like
he makes
very
music.
well.
Yeah,
it's almost not fair. Yeah, he's very talented.
Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for these questions. It was really fun.
My absolute pleasure. I'm so excited for people to see the film, and I'm really, really excited to see what's next.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Take care and stay safe.
Thanks. You too.
And thank you for your time.
There we go. That's our first little episode. Little bit, you know, few cracks along the way. But hey ho, you live and learn as you go along. I'm editing this and doing it all myself, so hopefully you enjoyed our little selection of things for you to watch. Hopefully it'll encourage you to go and seek out some of those bits and bobs as well. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast Soundtracking with Edith Bowman, and whilst you're subscribing, why don't you subscribe to this channel? I'm going to try and put up one of these little shows every week. In fact, next week we'll have Ricky Gervais on. I'll also have Lenny Abramson on. talking about his TV adaptation of Normal People, which is coming out on the BBC very, very soon. Also, Devs is a new Alex Garland show that's on BBC Two, and I'm hoping to get Ben Salisbury and Jeff Barrow on, who've done the music for it, to come and talk about that. So next week, for definite, we'll have Ricky, and we'll also have Lenny and loads more. So in the meantime, take care and be safe.